Welcome to Peace of Mind for Pet Parents, the podcast by BrightHaven Caregiver Academy. I'm Gail Pope.
And I'm Karen Wiley. And together we're here to support you in navigating life with your aging or ill pets. We know how deeply you care for your beloved companions, and we're here to offer guidance, understanding, and resources for this meaningful journey.
Each episode, we'll explore topics that address the daily challenges, emotional realities, and choices you face as a pet parent, helping you and your pets find peace, comfort, and joy. Whether it's making sense of a new diagnosis, adjusting to changing needs, or simply seeking a place to feel understood, you're not alone. Thank you for being here with us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Peace of Mind for Pet Parents. I'm Karen here with Gail, and today we're going to dive into the second life-changing diagnosis type that we wanted to talk about, and that is the difficult to manage diagnoses. Last time we talked about chronic conditions, which are those long-term illnesses that require ongoing care and are often stable or generally stable, at least part of the time. And today we're going to shift our focus to a different challenge, which is the diagnoses that can be unpredictable. They're often a little more complex and can be resistant to easy management. These are the kinds of conditions that keep all of us as pet parents up at night. Am I doing enough? Am I getting this right? So, Gail, let's get into this. What makes a diagnosis fall into a difficult to manage category? And how is it different from the chronic category that we've already talked about?
Good question. I think the first thing that springs to my mind is that it changes the life of the animal and also the caregiver, because you have to start allowing different time, different schedule, different medicine. There are a lot of different changes, particularly in the area perhaps of mobility, diet. There are lots of different things that can change as you move further along the scale to a more difficult to manage illness.
How do you think that affects a pet parent's need to know in terms of information, learning? Are they able to depend on their vet for everything, or what's happening to them day to day with their pet at home with a difficult to manage diagnosis?
I guess that depends on the person, doesn't it? To a greater
lot.
extent. Some people accept challenge. I'm going to do this. I'm in control. Okay, let me write it all down. I'm really organized. I've got medicine, I've got care, I've got appointments. Everything is a challenge. It's almost a joy, because I know I've felt this myself. I'm organized. I know what I've got to do. I understand the illness. And now we can get on with life. That's some people. Other people, particularly, I think when you don't have that much experience and you're dealing with something that has an unknown quality to it, like cancers, for instance, I think they scare us more than anything. But when you're dealing with something like that, that has its unknown quality, then I think emotionally it becomes a much harder challenge. I know I feel it working with, we've talked about Percy here and there, I know before, but working with something that can be an unknown, that can be potentially very scary when it happens. For instance, a male cat who has a blocked bladder, that becomes an emergency situation. I think you live in a different state with that kind of an illness, because you're on the edge of a cliff a lot of the time. You only start to learn to look for the small things that might herald something about to happen. So it's like being a firefighter. You're always on guard, ready. Again, with those more difficult to manage situations, sometimes I guess Mother Nature steps into the middle. Everything gets planned. You work your way into feeling comfortable with whatever medication you're using, whether it's conventional or holistic, and a routine gets set and you sail along very happily. You may hit a little roadblock here or there, but once you hit that plateau of, phew, wow, this is amazing, we're doing really well, that's the goal, isn't it?
That is definitely the goal. I think like what you're saying with your current situation with Percy is that some days it is a chronic condition, and other days, as you're beginning to identify not getting quite enough urine from him, then that's where your watchfulness goes up. And then it can easily get into that difficult to manage time
Yeah.
area.
And again, there's that old word, fear.
Yeah.
And when once fear, and because I still feel very fearful if I notice a symptom with him and I know it could be an emergency situation, I don't think we can control that kind of fear. It's fear of a sudden anything with any of our animals. If
Right.
something happens, like they choke on something they're eating, up comes our fear because we're their guardian, we're responsible, and we've got to figure out what it is we need to do to help. So
Right.
those kinds of situations, obviously we're not talking about acute things in this stage, we're talking about ongoing, but they can still be very fearful, very fearful.
I agree. I think with these type of diagnoses, and I think a common one that we would find with cats would be kidney disease and perhaps an elevation from one stage to another that
Yeah.
we're monitoring. And then also as one disease combines with another, as happens when animals are aging, also when people age. As one organ system has difficulty, others start adapting and not always in the best ways. As things do continue to progress, I found myself, and I'm just going to use my example with Mr. Hope, who was my palliative care patient for 2.5 years that I was fortunate to have after a cardio diagnosis. Everything was really very stable for a year and a half, and then the kidney disease began to progress along with the heart disease and so forth. But I would find my mornings as I would be waking up and not seeing him there in bed. So I'd be like, okay, so let me check out his other favorite places. And that'd be my first thing that I would do every morning. I would be starting my day, getting ready to heat some water from my black tea, got to have my caffeinated tea. And I would be eyeballing as I'm walking to put the kettle on the stove, I'm eyeballing his favorite places to find him, to make sure that he's stable. He didn't have a blood clot or a saddle thrombus overnight, which would have been an issue for his heart or anything else. And so for me, the fear issue was the morning. It's not
Yes.
to say that I didn't have to monitor everything throughout the day. Every couple hours, I'm doing my check. Is he there or is he up in his window? It's about the time of the morning he'd be in the window. But that's how I coped with it and how I monitored it. It was like, there were different times of day that
Yes.
there was a different level of anxiety, which I fueled into my monitoring, my observational efforts. But each one of us is going to need to find a way to handle it and find a balance between getting that sense of relief. Okay, everything's okay right now for the moment, because you start to understand that you can't control everything. Finding that, I don't even know if I can call it a sweet spot because it's always changing.
Changes.
So it's like you can't aim for a particular kind of response. I think those 5 or 10 minutes for me in the morning with Mr. Hope, I make sure I give him all of his pills and make sure he gets his treat for being such a good boy. Then it would be like, okay, let me have my tea. Seriously, that was my morning ritual for a year and a half with him. I was fortunate to have him for 2.5 years of pilling and observation and worry. But you have to find your way. You have to find your way through.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
think you just highlighted something that is probably true for almost anybody who has this deep love of animals or their own animal, if you like. You took me back to the sanctuary days with what you were talking, because I remember the very first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, when you've got lots of animals, is want to be sure that everyone's okay. It's the last thing you do before you go to bed at night. Sometimes in the middle of the night, you might have to get up and do it. But again, first thing in the morning, it would be just walking around the whole house, checking that people are where they're meant to be, where they usually are, taking note of those who are in the litter box. When you last walked by, she was still in the litter box. Oh my goodness. Just picking up all odd little things that you might see. And I think we all do it to one extent or another, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. If you've got an animal or a human in your house who is suffering with, I wouldn't necessarily use the word suffering, but who has a chronic illness that has become a little more part of daily management,
Right.
your radar, you develop this, just got to keep watching. I do it all
Yes.
the time with the dogs, particularly. Just double check. I mean, they both sleep on the other side of my desk here, but I find myself every now and again doing this, making sure that they're where they were and that everything's all right. Just part of being a mother, isn't it? As well as coping with a serious illness.
Yeah, because it's motherhood, but amped up a little bit. Because
Yeah,
it's not just the watching them play and making sure they have a healthy meal. It's that monitoring and learning what to look for. And I guess you have to develop your eye of what to look for before you can relax at all. When you're starting out, you don't know what to look for.
right.
And so everything's a crisis and everything's worthy of a text or a call to the clinic.
And the other thing that you have to also learn, if you can, is the balance between your new lifestyle as a professional caregiver, along with your family life. You've got family around you, other animals. You may have a husband and children or whatever, but they're used to their routine.
Yes.
So it's a blending of getting things right, because if you change everything to make this work, that's not going to work. Whereas if you turn it the other way around, that's not going to work either. So you have to look very carefully at how to fit in what you do at certain times so that your human family, if you like, don't feel neglected.
Absolutely.
And you're not caring for yourself because you're so worrying about what's happening when and other people. Once you get a system down that is flexible here and there, then everybody can play their part. And
Right.
sometimes the family can help, obviously, in monitoring, letting you know, I just saw Charlie go out in the garden and have a poo. Did you want to go and look? That.
Yeah, all the fun parts of being a pet parent. But it's so
Exactly.
true. And when you are able to involve other members of the family, I think it really does help a tremendous amount. There's likely certain aspects of the care that one member of the family is going to be more comfortable doing or just even better at. And although it's important that everybody be able to do everything, or the primary caregiver can never leave the house, which can be really a problem if they have a job outside the home or have other obligations. And it can shift too. Back in the days, 30 years ago, when I was breeding rough collies and Burman cats over the years, starting out, my husband did the injections because he was a biology professor in his previous life. So dealing with syringes and measuring things, he knew there was a painless way to do it. Whereas I would be hovering. I was not yet comfortable with it. So we would often devise, I would do the pilling because I learned to be very good at pilling in a way that I had more success than he did. Then at the beginning, he would handle sub-Q fluids at night, for example. I learned how to do it. At the beginning, he was more comfortable with it. And so we have found our path through
Yeah,
of who would do what, while at the same time, we each learned how to do everything, but we did find what each other was better at or more comfortable with. But you
yeah,
have to trust the other members of the family to help you and
yeah.
require teaching them how to do certain things.
Absolutely. It's all about balance, everything that goes in it. And that can be really tricky. You hit on a really big part is if the caregiver has a job that takes them out of the house and they don't have family, sometimes it can be really difficult to balance how to care for the animal that may need help during the daytime. Can they get home at lunchtime from work, for
Absolutely.
instance, or not? And some people simply don't have that much flexibility in their schedule. And that can be really tough.
Very, very true. I know we're fortunate, I think, to have more pet sitters now who are focusing on geriatric pets, more of them who can fill in for those lunch hour times to let an older dog out an extra time rather than waiting till mom or dad gets home 8 or 9 hours later. I know Gail, one of our hub members, another Gail, was saying that she has someone come in at lunchtime to check on her pet. And there are services out there, just depending on where you are, but might be worthwhile looking around for those who might be able to fill in for you occasionally.
Well, yes, all the way from a friend or a neighbor to a professional, depending on who you can find and who you can afford.
Right.
When you step into the more difficult management of these kind of illnesses, it can be very stressful for your wallet as well as your heart.
Absolutely. Some of the neighbors will be willing to learn what they need to do for your pet while you're gone, and others may be uncomfortable. Again, it's helping everybody learn a little bit more about what to
Yeah,
do on your own for your own pets, which
yeah,
sometimes we don't know what we're capable of doing and learning until our pets are diagnosed with something and it's a particular challenge that requires us to learn uh,
definitely.
how to support them. Now, you were just talking about the babies I refer to as the white grandpas, um, Ollie and Andy. Would you classify both of them as also entering into the cognitive challenges, or where are they in that area? Because they're 15 to 16. Is that
Mm,
approximately what you understand them to be?
yes, I would. They're very difficult, but not in your normal medical respects, mainly because Ollie is completely blind and deaf. However, he thinks he's a puppy and he rolls around and plays, but he also has a mild collapsing trachea. So when I hear him coughing, if you see me doing that quite often, it's because I've heard
Mhm.
him cough. But yes, because of his blindness and deafness, I've had to learn a different way of being. I learned very early on that he lives in his own world of energy. And my energy clearly is a part of his world, whereas I don't feel his energy obviously as strongly, because if I get up from this desk now and walk across there, even if he's asleep, most often he will get up and come after me. And I'm like, how the hell did you know that I got up?
He felt the vibrations of
It's,
you
yes,
moving.
it's
Absolutely.
vibrations. He's almost deaf. He's almost blind. He does hear noises, but it's the classic, he'll hear a noise but he looks over there when the noise came from over there. So
Mhm.
he's not very good with his hearing at all. He doesn't see very much, but he sees close up. He has more of emotional, his anxiety is really strong. He's restless, he's anxious, he worries. You can tell he's worried all the time about everything.
Mhm.
Again, if I get up and go anywhere, if he's asleep, he'll stay asleep, unlike Ollie, but he just, wherever I go, he wants to be with me. And then if I go to the front door as though I'm going out, leave me. But they're amazing dogs because they had a really hard life before they came to me. And they're still, I would say, still adjusting in many ways. Many ways. I wouldn't go out and leave them for more than a few hours. Oh, and of course, neither of them is potty trained, and I've been totally unsuccessful in trying to do that. So they both wear belly bands, and they're
Yeah, yeah.
pretty good for the most part. But I'm afraid Ollie, it's ingrained in him. I'm a man, and when I smell something that is pretty delightful, I have to lift my leg. Now, I don't see him doing it nearly as much as when he first came, but there are the odd occasions, especially if somebody new or different has been in the house, and especially if they've had an
Oh,
animal with them.
oh goodness, yes.
And that has to get marked. So his
Yes.
diaper does get wet on those occasions.
That adds a lot of fuel to my next question because I was going to say, what do you find yourself doing as caregiver
Yeah, well, yes, it's
for
changed.
for those babies? Because you've had them, what, a year and a half or so now?
Yeah. And that again goes to daily routine. On a day when I'm actually here and I can schedule myself how I want to, between every 2 to 3 hours, depending on if they're fast asleep when I'm looking at the clock and thinking, ooh, I need to take them out. I take them out into the back garden and they won't stay out there if I go indoors. I learned that early on. So we all go out in the garden, and it's good for me because I tend to
Yeah.
sit at my desk. So we walk up and down and they sniff, and I keep walking up and down in the hopes that they've got rid of as much wee as possible. And then I put their diapers back on and we come back in again. And then once a day, and I can't time this for a particular time, I put their leashes on and coats if necessary, and we go for a walk. I think all the neighbors love watching these two blind, silly old dogs with a silly old lady going down the road with dogs walking in different directions. Ollie likes to be in front. He knows where he's going. He's blind as a bat and he sometimes runs into things. On the other hand, it's interesting how blindness affects people in different ways and animal in different ways. If there's a car parked at the side of the road, he will be running forward and then he stops. And the energy from that blockage of the air, he knows it's there. He will react to different things that have suddenly appeared somewhere. So it's interesting. And Andy is much weaker. He doesn't have the strength. So Andy walks behind, and I keep pacing myself to keep Ollie back. And every now and again, they'll both want to stop, and their leashes get tangled up, and we get into a frightful muddle. And then Ollie will generally trip me up at some point, which is another embarrassing moment.
Or entertainment for the neighborhood. Just depends on how you look at things and your role in life.
I've never had two small dogs in this kind of a situation, but I've never done that before. Our dogs have, I guess, in the sanctuary days, mostly volunteers would take them out, or they were the kind of dog you just walk along and we go for a walk and we talk about being happy and balance and looking at the trees and the flowers. These two, it's not like that at all. So it's a big change. It's a big change.
I'm very fortunate in that right now I don't have anybody, knock on wood, I don't have anyone that I'm either monitoring for a chronic, difficult, or terminal condition. Kelly is our oldest. She's just coming up on 12. So far, so good. But I think because I am not in that vigilant mode at the moment, I really remember very clearly what those feelings are like when you are needing to monitor, especially as certain diseases come into that difficult to manage category, like kidney disease we spoke about, where the stages of disease can be changing, or cognitive dysfunction. We hear about it more often for dogs, but of course it also happens for cats.
I think the two illnesses that I would put at the top of the list, I would never have said cognitive dysfunction before, but yeah, I'm getting more and more familiar with it now, and it's very hard on the heart.
Yes.
Very hard on the heart, particularly. It's hard because you can't establish a routine, particularly because things change all the time. So that's tough. I think the one that has really scared me the most dealing with it over the years has been diabetes. I think learning how to cope with a diabetic, especially if it's a really difficult case. I got very clear at one point in the early days of the sanctuary. We brought in several diabetic cats and found that careful monitoring, changing their diets to a raw diet, within months, they were no longer diabetic. So I got really, I can walk on water with this. But then you get the next level, the animals that come that have been diabetic for a lot longer, they're in that more middle stage. I think fear really crept in because then you're worried morning, noon, and night. I think you can end up pricking an ear and checking the levels too often because you're so worried about them. Again, talking yourself off a ledge and getting comfortable with how to progress on a daily basis and how to pull that fear level back.
Yes. Yes. Part of it, just thinking of diabetes, for example, even 25 years ago, emergency rooms for people didn't have any way to check someone's blood for blood sugar. That's something that's fairly new. And for humans, we have type 1, 2, and 1.5 and 3 and all these various levels. The more you learn about a disease, the better able you're probably going to be, the less anxiety you're going to have, I guess, is what I'm going to say. So with diabetes, if you understand what spikes your cat's blood sugar and how it comes down, does it come down in 1 hour or 2 hour or 3 hour? It's going to be a little different than how it is with humans, but if you start understanding and you keep food stable, exactly like you were doing with the raw diet, then you can manage what is difficult to manage. It becomes a little more manageable, I guess.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I know there's going to be a lot of different difficult to manage diseases that we'll be focusing in on. We continue these episodes, but it's probably, from a time perspective, it's probably time for us to consider how to wrap up this discussion.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I guess what I will ask you to think about, what's one thing you would want pet parents to take away from this conversation if they are finding themselves with a pet that has a difficult to manage condition and they're trying to figure out their balance?
Oof, a lot. Most important for me, it would be two things. One would be self-care. That's creeping into more and more of the consultation work I do, because if you don't care for yourself, you are going to be emotionally, physically off balance. So you've got to start by honoring yourself in as much as a little time here and there for you. Just taking time to breathe, be in the moment, and know that all is well. I think that's a beautiful saying that is so powerful. All is well. However worried, however anxious, however nervous, just all is well. It's okay. It's going to be all right. And then it's working a routine. I think I hesitate because it's always difficult to stick to a routine. If you haven't got a foundation for how it's going to work, then life can become so discombobulated. So I think it's getting life organized as much as you can for routine, taking care of yourself, and know you're doing your best. You're doing it with love, and that's it. I think as long as we all tell ourselves we're doing our best and know that we're doing our best because we love so deeply, and we have to just go with that moment.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful, because we're making the very best choices we can at each moment, and knowing that diseases progress, conditions evolve. We are monitoring and doing the very best we can along the way. If today's conversation resonated with you at all, we'd love to hear from you. What challenges are you facing with your pet, and what small victories are you having along the way with your difficult to manage diagnoses in your pet? Do share with us in the comment sections and join our caregiver community. We'd love to have you with us, and perhaps in our membership hub that is opening in a couple weeks. And if you do find this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with friends and other fellow pet parents who are also struggling, because no one should have to navigate this path alone, and you don't have to. So thank you for spending some time with us today. We'll be back next time with another conversation to support you and your beloved pet. And I believe next time, Gail, it's going to be terminal diagnoses, which is our third area. So that will be what we'll tackle in our next discussion. And until then, take a deep breath and trust yourself and cherish each and every moment together with your pets, regardless of what they're doing. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on Peace of Mind for Pet Parents. We hope today's episode has offered you support and insight as you care for your aging or ill pets.
Remember, it's not just about the end, it's about living well at every stage of life. To continue your journey with us, explore more resources at BrightHaven Caregiver Academy's website, brightpathforpets.com, where you'll find guides, assessments, and a caring community of pet parents like you.
Until next time, may you and your pets find comfort, connection, and peace in every moment. Take care.